Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to take a look at the egg production application, which was created with Google AppSheets. So first, let's take a look at the data visual that we have here. On the Y column, we have the quantity of eggs, and on the X column, we have the days. And this, I just do a count from the primary key of the data column instead of putting the actual dates. I could put the dates here so you could see the dates, but it kind of clutters it up, especially on a phone. So I just use the number. Just use the number of the primary key. And this kind of tracks the egg production. You can see, like, this is kind of last spring, and then the summertime when they're producing the most. And then in the fall, so the production starts to go down. You can see where they're molting. And then here it is, February, and the production is beginning to go back up. They're done molting, and there's more daylight now. Chickens are incredibly photosensitive, so they're beginning to produce again, and the production is actually beginning to go up pretty quickly, relatively quickly, in comparison. And so this is really, what I do. I kind of track, hey, how are my chickens producing and how they produce over time. So you can't manage what you can't measure, so I kind of measure my production. It all started with a spreadsheet. And this is the spreadsheet I use called egg production. I just wanted to start tracking how many eggs am I getting a day and what kind of eggs am I getting. I have mostly like Americanas for my chickens. I have Easter eggers and Ida Browns are the majority of my chickens. And I have a variety of different colors that I get. I get brown eggs, light brown eggs, olive eggs, blue eggs, and like kind of a green blue egg or an aqua egg or something like that. It's a little bit different. So I just kind of like count based on the color. You could do anything you wanted here. You could say, hey, I've got a Plymouths and Rhode Island Reds and maybe a couple Americanas. And you might want to say just Plymouth, Rhode Island Red, and you kind of know what they're producing for their eggs, and then you can start counting based on your chickens. Maybe you name your chicken, like, my kids name my chickens, Chicken Nugget and Coconutty, and they all have names. I could have done one for each chicken. I could have done 18 across the board. It would have been a lot and I don't really know what chickens are laying, so I just do it by color, and it's a lot easier for me just to do a count. And you can see these colors, they kind of sum up here. So these columns sum to the total column based on each date, and then I have a true false, which is yes no kind of field for feed, sawdust, and water. Did I give them feed? Did I give them sawdust? Did I give them water? Sawdust is like litter for their coop. I don't really track when I change the coop. I kind of do it every 6 to 8 weeks. I'll just completely change it out, but a lot of times I'll just layer sawdust on top of on top of their poop, and until it gets really bad, especially in the summertime, I'm probably changing the litter a little bit more frequently. And then how often do I water the chickens? And I kind of track that too as well. And I have enough water to sustain them for a while, so they'll go back out. And in the summertime, it's a lot easier because I can run the hose out there. In the wintertime, I actually got to run buckets. It's a little bit different. And then how often do I treat them? And then how many eggs do I lose in a given day? Generally, I don't lose eggs, but I might do something stupid like load them in my pocket, forget I have them in my pocket, and bounce into something and lose a couple eggs, or I might just drop one or something, or a chicken may lay an egg on top of another egg and crack it, or sometimes that happens too as well. So it's just track how many eggs I lose in a given day. I generally don't lose them though. And so it really comes from, that's really where you got to start. You got to start from your data. Say, what do I want to see? What does my data look like? And then you can kind of build your app from the data. My app is a little unique because I have two different sets of data. One's a copy of the other data, because when you're writing the app, you have an input and you have a read only, and I can't do a read only from the input data fields. I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm sure I could. There's a way to do a relational database in this. I haven't done that yet. So this is really kind of in development. It's been in development since the summertime. I'm always making a little bit of changes here, but it really starts from the data. This is the main data that I'm kind of tracking, and I found that it was kind of hard just to track come back in, open up the spreadsheet, put the data in the spreadsheet, and then go back out. It was a lot easier for me just to have this on my phone and put the data in the phone, and it automatically puts it in the spreadsheet for me. And then I want a visual, and then the app kind of created the visual for me. So how do I go about doing that? Well, there's this thing called AppSheet, which is owned by Google or Alphabet, and you'd have to set up an account on appsheet.com, and integrates with your Gmail account, and you can build apps based on your data. You can build apps a bunch of different ways, but this is where you would start. And there's plenty of information out there on how to create apps off of AppSheet, and it's a no-code, low-code app. So that's basically where I got started. And then if I were to hit edit, it would bring me up to the edit screens, and I can actually look at, how my app is being developed here in the app screen. And the most, it will start you out in home, and it will give you some suggestions, and click to edit, and you can learn more, and you can apply themes and all that stuff. This is really where it comes from for me, is the data. Everything's based on the data. I've added a couple buttons and stuff here. I got a button here, a button here, and a button there. This button is the visual. This button is the input. And this button in the bottom right-hand corner is the input. And then this little button here actually gives me a view of the data. We'll look at it in a larger format towards the end of this video here. So, but it all starts with the data. And I have two different tables that I'm looking at. I have the Eggman table and the Sheet 1 table. The form response table is a table that is added automatically when you build the app from Egg Production. They're just gonna create a sheet for you right away. I don't use that. I'm using the sheet that I created myself. So I could probably just delete this. I'm not going to. I just, it's in there. It's just not being published. But I really only, these two tables is the Eggman table and the copy of the Eggman table. And why do I have two tables of the same data? Well, the Eggman table is the input table, and the Sheet table is the read-only table. And see how it's got a little lock on it. It means it's read-only. And I can't have an input table and a read-only table all on one table. It's probably a limitation. I'd probably have to open a relational database in order to do this properly. But I just did this from Google Sheets, so that's probably going to be a future development, or it's going to be a next version of this app. So let's look at the Eggman table, because that's really the main table that everything's coming from. And there's things in this table. There's storage. It gives you a little bit of information there. Security. You can actually secure it and say blah blah blah. You can open it up to the public. But why would I open it to the public? Because people would just be looking at my data. You can scale it. You localize it. You can put in some documentation, add some notes and stuff if you want. But really, what's most important is the columns. And in this particular, in the input table, I've used the date column as my key in my label, and then each one of these columns can kind of be edited, and you can see that there's a little edit button next to each one of the columns, and this is really these are the columns that we have the input data on, and then there's different slices and user settings and options and stuff like that. You can actually make it pretty. I'm not really a UX guy, user interface, but there's certain things that you have to do in the UX piece, because I've published the egg data view and the input egg data view, which is the two different sheets. One's Sheet 1 and the other one's from Eggman, and those have to be published out in order to show the app. But this is something you'd have to play around with. Again, it starts from your data. What do you want your data to look like, and then how do you want to visualize your data is really what builds out the app, and then you kind of finish out. So I can't really give you much more than you have to kind of do a little trial and error and play around with it. It took me, the better part of a day to build this out the first time, and it was working. And then I've tweaked it a little bit here and there. Last time I tweaked it was probably a couple weeks ago. I changed something on one of the data fields, but that's basically how this app works. If we take a look at the actual data, where the heck did I put that? Oh, it's here. You can see that we got the visualization, and then we have the input fields, and input, and these are all required fields. You can see that each one of these fields is required. The feed, the sawdust, the water, all that stuff's not required, but treats. I can make everything required, and you have to actually put in all the data. So like if I got 0 eggs, I'd have to actually hit plus and minus to actually do the input. I'm not going to save this because I didn't check my eggs yet today. And then the other thing to look at is if I go back to the discard changes, discard, yes. And then I go back here. If I wanted to actually look at every day, data, I can do that too as well from when I started collecting the data. So really, that's how this works. And then from a phone view, if we were to take a look, if I were to make changes, you can actually see it, the same data, and this is what the phone view looks like. The tablet and PC view is what we just saw, but this is how you can view it on the phone. So really, this is how you create the apps. I can't really create it for you. I could give you the app, but then you would look at my data, and that wouldn't really work for you. You'd have to kind of build it yourself based on your data. But it's I find it pretty convenient. I like looking at it. I like just opening up my phone and saying, okay, what are my chickens doing? And what was really cool is when they started producing again and seeing that visual of going from molting to production again was kind of cool for me. So that's the app sheet and the egg production data. Thank you so much for listening.